Sarah Martinez pushed her baby stroller through the crowded terminal of Los Angeles International Airport, her heart racing with anticipation. After 3 months abroad visiting her sick mother in Mexico, she was finally returning home to her husband David and their 6-month-old daughter Emma. The little girl slept peacefully in her stroller, exhausted from the long flight. The airport buzzed with its usual chaos of travelers, announcements echoing overhead, and the constant hum of rolling luggage. Sarah had been through this routine countless times, but today felt different. She noticed more security personnel than usual, their eyes scanning the crowds with heightened alertness. Recent security threats had put everyone on edge. As she approached the customs checkpoint, Sarah felt a familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. She had nothing to hide, but airports always made her nervous. Her documents were in order, her luggage properly declared, and Emma's baby supplies were neatly organized in the diaper bag. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Royal Guard Officer James Thompson stood at his post, his trained eyes observing the steady stream of passengers. With 15 years of experience in airport security, he had developed an instinct for spotting unusual behavior. Most travelers were predictable in their movements, their body language telling stories of exhaustion, excitement, or routine travel fatigue. Sarah's turn came, and she presented her documents with a polite smile. Officer Thompson noticed her slight nervousness, which wasn't uncommon for travelers returning from international trips. Parents with babies often seemed more anxious, worried about their children's comfort and the additional screening procedures. "Welcome back to the United States, Mrs. Martinez," Thompson said, examining her passport. "How long were you away?" 3 months, Sarah replied, gently rocking the stroller as Emma stirred slightly. "Visiting family in Guadalajara." Thompson nodded, his routine questions flowing naturally. "And this is your daughter?" "Yes, Emma. She's 6 months old now." Sarah's voice carried the proud tone of a new mother. As Thompson continued his standard procedures, his attention was drawn to the stroller. Something about its weight distribution seemed off. The way it sat, the slight imbalance when Sarah moved. In his experienced eye caught details that others might miss. In his years of service, he had learned to trust these subtle observations. The stroller appeared to be a standard travel model, navy blue with silver accents, the kind sold in baby stores across the country. Emma slept peacefully inside, her tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. Nothing appeared obviously wrong, yet Thompson's instincts were quietly alerting him. "I'm going to need to do a routine inspection of your stroller, ma'am," Thompson said in his professional but courteous tone. "It's standard procedure for travelers returning from extended trips." Sarah's face paled slightly, but she nodded. "Of course, whatever you need to do." Thompson called over his colleague, Officer Maria Santos, who specialized in thorough equipment searches. Together they had uncovered everything from hidden contraband to forgotten dangerous items. Their partnership had earned them recognition for their attention to detail and professional handling of sensitive situations. As Officer Santos approached, Thompson explained the situation. Both officers maintained their calm, professional demeanor, not wanting to alarm Sarah or disturb the sleeping baby unnecessarily. They had handled thousands of routine checks, and this appeared to be just another standard procedure. Sarah waited anxiously as the officers began their inspection, her mind racing through everything packed in the stroller. She had been so careful to follow all regulations, declaring everything properly, keeping receipts organized. The thought of any complications made her stomach churn with worry. The first part of their inspection revealed nothing unusual. The diaper bag contained typical baby supplies: bottles, formula, diapers, wipes, and a few toys. Emma's clothing and blankets were neatly folded beneath her sleeping form. Everything appeared exactly as expected for a mother traveling with an infant. But Officer Thompson's trained hands detected something as he examined the stroller's frame more carefully. There was a slight irregularity in one of the support bars, a barely perceptible difference in weight and feel. His fingers traced along the metal tubing, finding a section that seemed different from the rest. Officer Santos noticed Thompson's focused attention and moved closer to observe. Their wordless communication, developed through years of partnership, allowed them to work efficiently without creating unnecessary drama. Other passengers continued to flow through the checkpoint, unaware of the careful examination taking place. Thompson's investigation revealed a cleverly concealed compartment within the stroller's frame. The modification was professional, nearly invisible to casual observation. His pulse quickened as he realized they had discovered something significant. This was no longer a routine check. "Mrs. Martinez," Thompson said carefully, "I need you to step aside with me for a moment. We found something that requires further investigation." Sarah's world seemed to tilt as the words registered. Her mind raced through possibilities, none of them making sense. She had packed the stroller herself, used it daily during her stay in Mexico. How could there be anything wrong with it? The airport's background noise seemed to fade as Sarah found herself in a situation she had never imagined. Officer Santos gently took charge of the stroller, while Thompson guided Sarah to a private screening area. Emma continued sleeping, blissfully unaware that her simple baby stroller had become the center of an unfolding security incident. As they prepared to examine the hidden compartment, Thompson's radio crackled to life. Additional security personnel were being summoned to their location. Whatever was concealed in that stroller was about to be revealed, and the implications were already sending ripples through the airport's security network. Sarah watched in growing horror as more officers arrived, their serious expressions and urgent movements transforming her simple homecoming into something she could never have anticipated. Her peaceful return journey was about to become a story that would change everything. Officer Thompson carefully examined the hidden compartment within the stroller frame, while Sarah watched with mounting anxiety. The modification was sophisticated, requiring specialized tools and knowledge to create such a seamless hiding place. This wasn't the work of an amateur. "Mrs. Martinez, do you have any knowledge of this compartment?" Thompson asked, his voice maintaining professional neutrality despite the gravity of the situation. Sarah's eyes widened with genuine shock. "I had no idea that was there. I bought this stroller at a baby store in Guadalajara 3 months ago. It was brand new." Her voice trembled as the implications began to sink in. Officer Santos documented everything with her camera, capturing the stroller from multiple angles before Thompson proceeded with opening the compartment. The airport's security protocol was clear. Every step needed to be recorded for potential legal proceedings. As Thompson worked to access the hidden space, Sarah's mind raced back to her time in Mexico. She had purchased the stroller from a reputable store, recommended by her mother's neighbor who had bought similar items there. The salesperson had been helpful and professional, even offering to have it delivered to her mother's house. "The store delivered it directly," Sarah said suddenly, her voice breaking the tense silence. "I never actually saw it in the store. They said it would be more convenient to bring it to my mother's address." Thompson paused his work and looked at Sarah intently. This detail could be crucial. Delivery services provided opportunities for tampering that in-store purchases didn't allow. He made a mental note to include this information in his report. The compartment finally opened with a soft click, revealing its contents. Thompson's trained eye immediately recognized what he was seeing, and his expression grew more serious. Inside the hidden space were several small packages, each wrapped in clear plastic and carefully sealed. Officer Santos moved closer to observe while maintaining the secure perimeter around their workspace. Other passengers continued to flow through the checkpoint, but their activities were temporarily redirected to avoid the investigation area. The airport security team was working to maintain normal operations while handling this developing situation. Thompson used his tools to carefully extract one of the packages without contaminating potential evidence. The substance inside appeared to be a white crystalline powder, professionally packaged in individual portions. His experience told him this was likely a controlled substance, though laboratory testing would be required for confirmation. "Mrs. Martinez, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation," Thompson said, his voice grave. "We've discovered what appears to be illegal substances concealed in your baby's stroller. You have the right to remain silent and to have an attorney present during questioning." Sarah's legs nearly gave out beneath her as the words hit her. The nightmare she found herself in seemed impossible, surreal. She had never been involved with drugs, had barely even drunk alcohol since Emma was born. Her life was focused on her family, her job as an elementary school teacher, and caring for her aging mother. "This can't be happening," Sarah whispered, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I'm a teacher. I have a clean record. I would never put my baby in danger like this." Officer Santos, who had seen many cases involving innocent people caught up in criminal schemes, noticed Sarah's genuine distress. Her body language, emotional responses, and shocked reactions all appeared authentic. However, their job was to secure the evidence and follow protocol, not make judgments about guilt or innocence. The packages continued to emerge from the compartment, 6 in total, each containing what appeared to be the same white substance. The quantity suggested this was intended for distribution rather than personal use. Thompson's estimate put the street value in the tens of thousands of dollars. Emma began to stir in her carrier, sensing the tension and changed atmosphere around her. Sarah instinctively moved toward her daughter, but Officer Santos gently guided her to maintain distance from the evidence area. The stroller had become a crime scene, and proper procedures had to be followed. "I need to call my husband," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "David needs to know what's happening. He'll be waiting for us at home." Thompson nodded, understanding the human element of the situation while maintaining his professional duties. "You'll be able to make phone calls once we complete the initial processing. Right now, we need to secure all the evidence and document everything properly." Additional security personnel arrived at the scene, including a supervisor who would oversee the case and coordinate with federal agencies. Drug trafficking across international borders fell under multiple jurisdictions, and the proper authorities needed to be notified immediately. The supervisor, Lieutenant Patricia Wells, approached Thompson for a briefing on the situation. Her 20-year career in airport security had exposed her to countless trafficking attempts, but cases involving seemingly innocent families always required extra attention to detail. "What's our assessment of the passenger?" Wells asked Thompson quietly. "She appears genuinely shocked and distressed," Thompson replied. "Claims no knowledge of the compartment or contents. Says the stroller was purchased new and delivered directly to her location in Mexico." Wells nodded, making notes in her report. The investigation would need to explore every angle: the store where the stroller was purchased, the delivery service, anyone who might have had access to the stroller during Sarah's stay in Mexico. Criminal organizations were increasingly using unwitting carriers to transport illegal substances. Sarah watched the organized chaos around her, feeling helpless and terrified. Officers were photographing, measuring, and cataloging evidence. Her simple baby stroller had been transformed into an elaborate crime scene. Other travelers cast curious glances in their direction, some taking pictures with their phones. The reality of her situation began to crystallize as she realized she might not be going home today. David would be waiting at the airport pickup area, probably growing concerned as her delayed arrival stretched longer. Emma would need feeding soon, and all her supplies were now part of a criminal investigation. "What happens to my baby?" Sarah asked Officer Santos, her maternal instincts overriding her fear for herself. "Child Protective Services will be contacted if you're taken into custody," Santos explained gently. "They'll work to place her with family members if possible." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. The possibility of being separated from Emma was more terrifying than any criminal charges she might face. Her daughter needed her, and Sarah had never been away from her for more than a few hours since birth. As the initial evidence collection neared completion, Thompson prepared for the next phase of the investigation. The packages would be sent for immediate testing, the stroller would be thoroughly examined by specialists, and Sarah would need to be formally questioned about her activities in Mexico. The routine homecoming that had started with such joy and anticipation had transformed into a legal nightmare that would change Sarah's life forever. As she was led away from the checkpoint area, she caught one last glimpse of Emma, still sleeping peacefully, unaware that their world had just been turned upside down. Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Drug Enforcement Administration arrived at LAX within hours of the discovery. Her team specialized in international trafficking cases, and the sophisticated concealment method suggested involvement of organized criminal networks. The stroller modification was professional grade, indicating resources and expertise beyond typical amateur smuggling attempts. Sarah sat in the secure interview room, Emma finally in her arms after what felt like an eternity. A social worker had been present during the reunion, documenting the interaction and ensuring the baby's welfare. Sarah's relief at holding her daughter again was overshadowed by the terrifying uncertainty of their future. "Mrs. Martinez, I need you to walk me through every detail of your time in Mexico," Detective Rodriguez began, her tone professional but not unkind. "Start from when you decided to make the trip." Sarah took a shaky breath, adjusting Emma in her arms. "My mother called in March. She'd been diagnosed with diabetes complications and needed help managing her medications and doctor appointments. I took a leave of absence from my teaching job to care for her." The detective made notes as Sarah continued her story. Every detail could potentially lead to answers about how the drugs ended up in her stroller. Criminal organizations often exploited family emergencies and emotional vulnerabilities to recruit unwitting carriers. "Tell me about purchasing the stroller," Rodriguez prompted. "Emma had outgrown her infant carrier, and I needed something more, suitable for navigating my mother's neighborhood streets. The sidewalks there are uneven and I wanted something sturdy." Sarah's voice grew stronger as she focused on the practical details. Sarah explained how her mother's neighbor, Elena Vasquez, had recommended Bebe Mundo, a baby store in the Tlaquepaque district. Elena's daughter had purchased several items there and praised their quality and service. The recommendation had seemed trustworthy coming from a longtime family friend. "The salesperson was very helpful," Sarah continued. "His name was Carlos, I think. He showed me several models and explained the features. When I chose this one, he offered free delivery since I didn't have a car large enough to transport it." Detective Rodriguez's attention sharpened. Delivery services were common cover for criminal operations. "Did you ever see the actual stroller in the store or just the display model?" Sarah paused, thinking back. "Just the display model. Carlos said they would deliver a new one in the original packaging. He seemed professional, and the store looked legitimate." The detective made more notes, already planning to investigate the store and its employees. International trafficking rings often used legitimate businesses as fronts, employing unwitting staff alongside criminal operatives. The modification to Sarah's stroller suggested someone with access to unopened merchandise. "What happened when the stroller was delivered?" Rodriguez asked. "It arrived 2 days later while I was at the doctor with my mother," Sarah replied. "Elena accepted the delivery for me. When we returned home, it was sitting in the living room, still in its box. I assembled it that evening following the instructions." This detail was crucial. If the stroller had been out of Sarah's sight during delivery, multiple people could have had access to modify it. Criminal networks often used brief windows of opportunity to plant contraband in legitimate purchases. Rodriguez showed Sarah photos of the hidden compartment and the professional modification work. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" Sarah studied the images with growing horror. The sophisticated metalwork and seamless integration were far beyond anything she could have imagined. "Never. I had no idea such a thing was possible. It looks like it was made in a factory." Meanwhile, at the airport, forensic specialists were conducting a thorough examination of the stroller and its contents. The white crystalline substance had tested positive for high-purity cocaine, with an estimated street value of $80,000. The packaging bore markings that suggested South American origin, consistent with major cartel operations. Agent Jennifer Park, from the FBI's International Crimes Division, joined the investigation via video conference from the agency's Los Angeles field office. Her expertise in Mexican cartel operations would be crucial for understanding the broader criminal network involved. The packaging style and purity levels match patterns we've seen from the Jalisco New Generation cartel, Agent Park explained to the investigative team. They've been expanding operations into seemingly legitimate businesses to avoid detection. Detective Rodriguez updated Park on Sarah's story and the store where the stroller was purchased. "We need to coordinate with Mexican authorities to investigate Bebe Mundo and anyone connected to that delivery." Back in the interview room, Sarah answered questions about everyone she had encountered in Mexico. The investigation required mapping her entire social network during the 3-month stay, identifying anyone who might have had access to information about her travel plans or possessions. My mother hosted a few visitors while I was there, Sarah recalled. Neighbors checking on her health, some family friends I hadn't seen in years. Elena was there almost daily, helping with errands and translation at medical appointments. Each name Sarah provided would require investigation. Criminal networks often used long-term community members to identify potential carriers, exploiting trust relationships and community connections. The fact that Elena had recommended the store and accepted the delivery made her particularly significant to the investigation. Sarah's phone, which had been secured as evidence, contained a wealth of information about her activities in Mexico. Location data, photographs, and communication records would help investigators reconstruct her movements and identify potential points of contact with criminal networks. Mrs. Martinez, I need you to understand something important, Detective Rodriguez said, setting aside her notes. Based on your responses and our preliminary investigation, we believe you're a victim in this situation rather than a willing participant. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, though fear still gripped her heart. What does that mean for Emma and me? It means we're going to work to prove your innocence while tracking down the real criminals, Rodriguez explained. However, you'll need to cooperate fully with our investigation, and there may be restrictions on your travel until the case is resolved. The detective explained that Sarah would likely be released on her own recognizance, but would need to remain available for further questioning. The investigation could take weeks or months to complete, depending on the cooperation of Mexican authorities and the complexity of the criminal network. Emma began fussing, and Sarah realized it was past her feeding time. The normal rhythms of motherhood continued even in the midst of this legal nightmare. A social worker brought prepared formula and helped Sarah attend to her daughter's needs. What about my husband? Sarah asked. He's been waiting at the airport for hours. He must be terrified. Detective Rodriguez arranged for David Martinez to be contacted and briefed on the situation. His shock and disbelief would mirror Sarah's experience, but his support would be crucial for her mental health and legal defense during the challenging days ahead. As evening approached, the initial phase of the investigation was complete. Sarah would be released to return home with Emma, but their lives had been forever changed by the discovery in the airport. The sophisticated criminal operation that had used her as an unwitting carrier was still out there, potentially victimizing other innocent families. The international investigation was just beginning, with law enforcement agencies in 2 countries working to unravel a trafficking network that had operated undetected for unknown lengths of time. Sarah's case might be the key to exposing a much larger criminal enterprise. David Martinez arrived at the federal building 3 hours after receiving the shocking phone call about his wife's situation. His mind had been racing through impossible scenarios during the drive from their suburban home, where he had been preparing Emma's nursery for her return. Nothing could have prepared him for the reality of seeing Sarah in a government interview room, their daughter in her arms, surrounded by federal agents. This has to be some kind of mistake, David said, his voice breaking as he embraced his family. Sarah wouldn't hurt a fly. She's dedicated her entire career to helping children learn and grow. Detective Rodriguez had seen countless family reactions to drug trafficking arrests, and David's shock appeared genuine. His background check had revealed a clean record, stable employment as an aerospace engineer, and no known connections to criminal activity. The couple's financial records showed typical middle-class spending patterns with no unusual cash deposits or luxury purchases. Meanwhile, in Guadalajara, Mexican federal police were conducting a raid on Bebemundo. The operation, coordinated with U.S. authorities, aimed to uncover evidence of the store's involvement in the trafficking operation. What they discovered exceeded their expectations and revealed a sophisticated international smuggling network. Carlos Mendoza, the salesperson who had helped Sarah, was found to be using a false identity. His real name was Ricardo Vega, and he had connections to known cartel operatives. Hidden in the store's back room were tools and equipment for modifying baby products, creating secret compartments in strollers, car seats, and high chairs. This operation has been running for at least 2 years, reported Agent Miguel Santos from Mexico's National Intelligence Center. They were targeting American mothers traveling alone with infants, especially those staying for extended periods with family members. The criminal network had developed a systematic approach to identifying potential carriers. They monitored social media posts about travel plans, tracked visitors to certain neighborhoods, and cultivated relationships with community members who could provide information about suitable targets. Elena Vasquez, Sarah's mother's neighbor, was brought in for questioning. Her cooperation with investigators revealed a terrifying pattern of manipulation that had ensnared multiple innocent families. Elena had been approached months earlier by people claiming to work for a legitimate market research company. They paid me to recommend certain stores to American visitors, Elena admitted tearfully. They said it was to help local businesses compete with international chains. I never knew about drugs or anything illegal. The fake market research company had been gathering intelligence on American families living temporarily in the area. They collected information about travel dates, family compositions, and departure plans. This data was then used to target specific individuals for unwitting drug transportation. Back in Los Angeles, forensic accountants were tracing financial records connected to the criminal network. The investigation revealed a complex money laundering operation involving multiple businesses across both countries. The profits from drug sales were being filtered through legitimate enterprises, making detection difficult for traditional law enforcement methods. Sarah's case had inadvertently exposed a vulnerability in international security systems. Criminal organizations were exploiting the trust associated with families traveling with infants, knowing that parents with babies typically received less scrutiny from border security and customs officials. The psychological profile is brilliant, from a criminal perspective, explained Dr. Amanda Chen, a criminal psychologist consulting on the case. Mothers traveling alone with infants evoke sympathy and protection instincts in security personnel. They're also usually focused on their children's needs rather than scrutinizing their belongings. The investigation revealed that at least 12 other families had been targeted by the same network over the past 18 months. Some had successfully transported drugs without detection, while others had abandoned their strollers or changed travel plans for unrelated reasons, unknowingly avoiding criminal charges. One family from Phoenix had donated their Mexico-purchased stroller to charity after returning home, never knowing it contained hidden contraband. Another couple from Denver had their stroller stolen from their hotel, which investigators now realized was likely a criminal operation retrieving their planted drugs when the family's travel plans changed. Sarah struggled with the psychological impact of learning she had been carefully selected and manipulated by criminal professionals. The sense of violation extended beyond the legal charges to a fundamental questioning of her judgment and ability to protect her family. They watched me for weeks, Sarah told David during one of their private moments. They knew Emma's schedule, my mother's medical appointments, even what time I went grocery shopping. We were never safe. David worked with criminal defense attorney Rachel Chen, who specialized in cases involving unwitting drug carriers. The legal strategy would focus on proving Sarah's innocence while supporting the federal investigation into the criminal network that had victimized her family. The evidence strongly supports Sarah's innocence, Attorney Chen explained to the family. Her consistent story, genuine emotional responses, and lack of any criminal history all work in her favor. However, we need to prepare for the possibility that this case could take months to resolve. The media attention surrounding the case was intense but largely sympathetic to Sarah's situation. Local news stations focused on the sophisticated criminal network rather than portraying her as a typical drug trafficking suspect. The story resonated with parents who realized how easily they could have been targeted in similar circumstances. Emma, now 7 months old, remained blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding her family. Her normal developmental milestones continued despite the legal proceedings, providing Sarah with moments of joy and normalcy amid the overwhelming stress of the investigation. The international scope of the case required coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies, creating delays but also increasing the resources available for the investigation. Europol and Interpol provided intelligence about similar operations in other countries, revealing that the network Sarah had encountered was part of a global criminal enterprise. Evidence emerged that the same organization had been operating in other Mexican tourist destinations, targeting American families visiting relatives or staying for extended periods. The pattern was consistent: legitimate businesses serving as fronts, community members recruited as unwitting intelligence gatherers, and sophisticated product modifications to conceal contraband. Sarah's cooperation with investigators had provided crucial information for dismantling the network, but it also meant continued involvement in a dangerous criminal case. Protection measures were implemented for her family while the investigation continued, including regular check-ins with federal agents and security assessments of their home and workplace. The psychological counseling provided to Sarah focused on processing the trauma of manipulation and betrayal. Learning that her 3-month stay in Mexico had been monitored and that criminals had exploited her care for her sick mother created lasting emotional scars that would require ongoing treatment. As winter approached, the investigation had expanded to include operations in 6 Mexican states and coordination with law enforcement agencies in 4 other countries. Sarah's case had become the key to exposing one of the most sophisticated international drug trafficking operations ever discovered. But the personal cost to her family continued to mount with each passing day. 6 months after the airport incident, Sarah Martinez sat in her living room watching Emma take her first tentative steps. The milestone that should have been pure joy was overshadowed by the federal agents conducting surveillance outside their home and the ongoing legal proceedings that had consumed their lives. The international investigation had mushroomed into the largest drug trafficking case in recent FBI history. Operation Clean Slate, as it had been codenamed, had uncovered a network spanning 7 countries and involving dozens of legitimate businesses used as fronts for criminal activity. Sarah's unwitting cooperation had been the crack that brought down the entire operation. "Mrs. Martinez, we have some significant developments to share with you," Detective Rodriguez announced during her weekly check-in. "The Mexican authorities have arrested the main leadership of the cartel cell that targeted you." Sarah looked up from Emma, who was clapping excitedly at her newfound mobility. After months of uncertainty, news of arrests should have brought relief. Instead, Sarah felt only exhaustion from the prolonged stress of living under investigation. The arrests had come after a months-long surveillance operation that traced the network's activities across multiple Mexican states. Ricardo Vega, the false salesperson who had helped Sarah select her stroller, had been captured along with 8 other operatives. Their detailed records revealed the scope of their operation and confirmed Sarah's complete innocence. "They kept extensive files on all their targets," Rodriguez explained. "Your file contains photographs, daily activity logs, and detailed notes about your routine. They monitored you for 6 weeks before making contact through Elena." David, who had been working from home to support his family during the crisis, struggled with anger toward the criminals who had violated their privacy so completely. The invasion extended beyond the drug trafficking to a fundamental violation of their family's security and peace of mind. Emma's babbling drew Sarah's attention back to the present moment. Her daughter had been crawling toward a toy piano, one of the few possessions that had remained untouched by the investigation. Most of their belongings from Mexico had been seized as evidence, including Emma's favorite blanket and several toys. The financial strain of legal fees and David's reduced work schedule had forced difficult decisions about their future. Sarah's teaching position had been placed on administrative hold pending resolution of the federal charges, leaving them dependent on David's income alone. "When can I go back to work?" Sarah asked Rodriguez. "My students need consistency, and we need the income." "The district attorney is reviewing the evidence for final disposition of charges," Rodriguez replied. "Based on everything we've discovered, I expect you'll be fully cleared within the next few weeks." Sarah had heard similar predictions before, each deadline passing without resolution as the investigation expanded and new evidence emerged. The legal system's pace felt glacial compared to the urgent needs of daily life with a growing toddler. Emma had begun walking more confidently, her personality emerging as she explored their child-proofed living room. Her development continued, regardless of the legal proceedings, creating precious moments of normalcy that helped sustain Sarah through the darkest periods of uncertainty. The psychological counseling sessions had helped Sarah process the trauma, but trust remained difficult. Simple activities like grocery shopping or visiting the pediatrician felt fraught with anxiety about who might be watching or what innocent interactions could be misinterpreted. "The hardest part is feeling like I failed to protect Emma," Sarah confided to her therapist. "I was supposed to keep her safe, and instead I unknowingly put her in danger." Dr. Patricia Williams, the family therapist, had worked with other victims of elaborate criminal schemes. "You were targeted by professionals who spent weeks studying your vulnerabilities. Your maternal instincts and care for your mother were used against you. That's not a failure of judgment, it's sophisticated criminal manipulation." Media attention had largely been supportive, with several national news programs featuring Sarah's story as an example of how ordinary families could become unwitting victims of international crime. The publicity had helped with legal expenses, through a defense fund established by other parents who identified with her situation. Emma's first birthday approached with bittersweet emotions. The celebration that should have marked a joyful milestone was complicated by uncertainty about their future and the ongoing legal proceedings. David had planned a small family gathering, avoiding larger celebrations that might attract unwanted attention. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning in November. Detective Rodriguez called with news that would change everything for the Martinez family. The Mexican government had agreed to a plea deal with Ricardo Vega that included detailed testimony about the criminal network's operations and confirmation of Sarah's victim status. Vega provided a complete confession about their targeting methods, Rodriguez explained during an emergency meeting. He specifically stated that you had no knowledge of the drugs and were selected precisely because of your innocent profile. The confession included details about dozens of other operations and confirmed that Sarah's case had been instrumental in exposing the entire network. Her unwitting cooperation with investigators had prevented countless other families from experiencing similar victimization. Federal prosecutors officially dropped all charges against Sarah that afternoon. The 18-month nightmare that had begun with a routine airport security check was finally ending with complete vindication of her innocence. "You're free to resume your normal life," Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Brooks told Sarah during the final meeting. "Your cooperation has been essential to one of our most successful international trafficking investigations." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions as she processed the news. Relief was overshadowed by anger at the criminals who had stolen months of her family's life, and by grief for the innocence and security that could never be fully restored. Emma took her first independent steps across the living room that evening, walking directly into Sarah's arms. The symbolism wasn't lost on either parent as they celebrated both their daughter's development and their family's freedom from the legal system. The school district confirmed that Sarah's teaching position would be restored for the spring semester, allowing her to return to the classroom she had missed throughout the investigation. Her students had been following her story through local news coverage, and many had created welcome-back cards expressing support. David's aerospace company had been supportive throughout the ordeal, but the extended stress had taken its toll on his career advancement and professional relationships. The family would need time to rebuild the financial and emotional stability that had been disrupted by their unwitting involvement in international crime. As winter settled over Los Angeles, the Martinez family began the slow process of reclaiming their normal life. The external trappings of the investigation, the surveillance, the regular meetings with federal agents, the constant legal uncertainty, were ending, but the psychological impact would require ongoing attention. Emma's innocent laughter filled their home once again, a reminder that life continued to offer joy and hope despite the criminal disruption that had temporarily derailed their family's journey. The ordeal had tested their relationship and individual resilience, but they had survived as a family unit committed to protecting each other and moving forward together. 2 years had passed since that terrifying day at LAX airport, and Sarah Martinez stood before her 4th grade classroom, watching her students work quietly on their math problems. The familiar sounds of pencils scratching on paper and whispered questions filled the room with a normalcy she had once taken for granted but now treasured deeply. Emma, now approaching her third birthday, attended a daycare center just a few blocks from Sarah's school. Every lunch break, Sarah would walk over to have lunch with her daughter, cherishing these daily moments of connection that reminded her of what truly mattered in life. The legal proceedings had officially concluded 8 months earlier with the conviction of 37 individuals across 3 countries. The criminal network that had targeted Sarah's family was completely dismantled, with its leaders serving lengthy prison sentences in both Mexican and American facilities. Operation Clean Slate had become a model for international law enforcement cooperation, and Sarah had been invited to speak at several conferences about her experience as an unwitting victim of sophisticated trafficking operations. These speaking engagements had become an unexpected source of healing, allowing her to transform her trauma into education that might protect other families. Mrs. Martinez helped catch some really bad people, her student Marcus announced during show and tell one Friday morning. My mom saw her on the news talking about keeping families safe when they travel. Sarah smiled at Marcus's innocent pride in his teacher's inadvertent heroism. Her students knew the basic story, but understood it in the simple terms of good versus evil that made sense to 9-year-olds. Their acceptance and admiration had helped restore her confidence in ways that adult counseling alone could not achieve. David had been promoted to senior engineer at his aerospace company, partly in recognition of his dedication during the family crisis, but also due to his exceptional work on a satellite communication project. The financial stability his advancement provided had allowed them to purchase a larger home, with a yard where Emma could play safely. The new house represented more than just additional space. It symbolized their family's recovery and their commitment to building a secure future despite the disruption they had endured. Sarah had insisted on a home security system and tall fences, practical measures that helped her feel protected while not becoming prisoners of their past trauma. Emma's personality had blossomed into that of a curious, energetic toddler who showed no signs of being affected by the early months of stress and uncertainty. Her resilience amazed both parents and served as a daily reminder of children's remarkable ability to adapt and thrive when surrounded by love and stability. "Mama, airplane!" Emma shouted excitedly whenever aircraft passed overhead, pointing. With the enthusiasm of a child who had no negative associations with air travel, Sarah was determined to ensure that Emma's relationship with travel would be based on adventure and discovery, rather than fear and suspicion. The Victim Compensation Fund established by the federal government had provided financial support for therapy and legal expenses, but more importantly, it had connected Sarah with other families who had experienced similar victimization. These relationships had evolved into a support network that provided ongoing emotional assistance and practical advice. Maria Santos, a mother from Texas whose family had been targeted by the same criminal network, had become particularly close to Sarah. Their monthly video calls and occasional visits provided opportunities to discuss the ongoing challenges of recovery and the gradual process of rebuilding trust in the world. "It gets easier," Maria had assured Sarah during one particularly difficult period. "But it never goes away completely. We just learn to carry it differently." Sarah's mother had recovered well from her diabetes complications and now visited Los Angeles regularly to spend time with Emma. These visits were joyful occasions that helped repair the family bonds that had been strained by the criminal exploitation of Sarah's trip to care for her mother. The relationship with Elena Vasquez, her mother's former neighbor, remained complicated. Elena had also been victimized by the criminal network, manipulated into providing information about American visitors without understanding the criminal implications. Their friendship was slowly healing through honest conversations about forgiveness and shared trauma. Detective Rodriguez had become an unexpected friend, checking in with the family periodically and sharing updates about other cases that had been solved using intelligence gathered during Operation Clean Slate. Her professionalism during the investigation had evolved into genuine care for the family's welfare. "Your cooperation saved countless other families from experiencing what you went through," Rodriguez reminded Sarah during their most recent conversation. "That has to count for something in how you process this experience." Sarah had begun writing a book about her experience, working with a co-author who specialized in true crime narratives. The project served multiple purposes, providing additional income for the family, creating a permanent record that might help other victims, and offering Sarah a structured way to process her trauma through storytelling. The manuscript was nearing completion, with interest from several publishers who recognized both the compelling narrative and its potential educational value. Sarah hoped the book might be used in law enforcement training programs to help officers better understand the psychological impact of victimization on innocent families. Emma's third birthday party was held in their backyard, surrounded by friends from daycare, neighbors who had supported them throughout the ordeal, and law enforcement personnel who had become extended family members. The celebration represented everything their lives had become: normal, joyful, and secure. As Sarah watched Emma blow out her birthday candles, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The terrifying experience at the airport had initially seemed like the end of their peaceful existence, but it had ultimately led to a deeper appreciation for family, community, and the resilience of the human spirit. David joined Sarah on the patio as the party continued around them, Emma laughing as she played with her new toys. The sound of their daughter's joy was the sweetest victory over the criminals who had tried to use their family for illegal purposes. "No regrets?" David asked, referring to their decision to fully cooperate with the investigation despite the personal costs. Sarah watched Emma chase soap bubbles across the yard, her laughter carrying on the warm afternoon breeze. "None at all. We helped stop them from hurting other families. That has to be worth everything we went through." The Martinez family had learned that ordinary people could become victims of extraordinary crimes, but they had also discovered that love, truth, and justice could triumph over manipulation and criminal exploitation. Their story had begun with terror and uncertainty, but concluded with healing, purpose, and the quiet satisfaction of lives rebuilt stronger than before. As evening approached and guests began to leave, Sarah cleaned up birthday party decorations while Emma napped peacefully upstairs. The routine activities of family life continued, blessed now with the knowledge that their nightmare was truly over, and their future was their own to determine. The baby stroller that had changed their lives forever was now evidence in a federal warehouse, but Emma's new stroller sat safely in their garage, loaded only with toys, snacks, and the innocent belongings of a happy toddler whose family had survived their worst nightmare and emerged with their love intact.